right, you're welcome back. You're watching TVC Breakfast. We'll be looking at the budget proposal as laid out by President Buhari yesterday, 7.3 trillion naira. That's the figure for the 2017 budget. An increase, according to some, of about 1 trillion or so from 2016 budget. But we have our guest in the studio who will be looking at this. For us is a financial analyst, Nnaemeka Obiaraeri. Good morning. Thanks for joining us on the show.
Thank you very much. You're welcome.
Well, President Buhari is quite optimistic that the 2017 budget will take Nigeria, pull Nigeria out of recession and push it into economic prosperity. Are you that optimistic looking at what he laid out yesterday?
7.29 trillion naira divided by the benchmark
42.
No, divided by the benchmark forex rate that they use, 305.
305
comes down to about 20 to 21 billion dollars to drag us out of recession. Let's watch and see. But the truth of the matter remains, you have to look at the assumptions. 2.2 barrels per day crude oil production. We are looking at GDP growth of 3% per annum. We are already in a dip of negative 2.16.
A revenue of 10.
Yes, we are looking at a capital expenditure of 2.24 trillion naira. A recurrent expenditure of 2.9 trillion, out of which 1.8 trillion is the wage bill. And I just did a little simulation. If you divide 1.8 trillion by average of 100,000, you're looking at about 18 million personnel. If you divide it by 300,000 naira per annum, we're looking at about 6 million personnel. Do we have up to that number in the public sector? Is another question. And looking at it, I will tell you this. For a government that have mounted so much about transformation, about economic recovery, for Nigeria to get out of the wood, we should be talking about a budget of about 10 to 15 trillion. And I can tell you this, a 107 trillion naira sized economy can actually generate that if we put our head down to think. All I see about this budget is all about budget of oil sharing. Over the last 16 years, from 1999 till now, if you look at it, we've gotten over almost $1 trillion in oil revenue.
Yes.
Under Obasanjo, Nigeria generated almost about $288 billion. Under Yar'Adua, before he died, we raised about $144 billion gross oil revenue. Under Jonathan, we raised gross revenue of almost $500 billion. Under the current government, we've raised almost about 50-something billion dollars from crude oil. This budget, just like the budgets of the previous years, I'm sorry to say it, just has to do with oil sharing of oil revenue. Where is diversification that they promised us in 2016? And where is that diversification still in this 2017 budget? And we planked it on a 305 naira foreign exchange rate. Currently, we have 5 foreign exchange markets. On an average, if you go out there to go and look for dollar, you will not get it at less than 450. IFM rate, if you look at the FMDQ, it will show you 308, but you can't get it in the market at 308. Now, how do we sustain that exchange rate at 305? What are we doing to support the supply side of the dollar? How are we diversifying our economy? There are other areas that are untapped. So you look at it holistically. Yes, the budget has been presented, but I will tell you the truth. This budget, just like the previous budget, that is short on assumptions. In fact, if you look at the 2016 budget, most of the assumptions failed. That is why we are where we are today. And again, we've come out again. If we're looking at output of 2.2 million barrels per day, have we put in place, what measures have we put in place to ensure that we contain the restiveness in the Niger Delta region?
President Buhari did say something about ensuring that the Niger Delta militants will be engaged in such a way that it will not affect, at least to the barest minimum, the low output of oil from that part of the country.
How long can we continue in this country to apply elixirs that is not sustainable way out. How long can we continue to provide amnesty and bribery and all manner of things to contain these guys without providing those sure structural, fiscal, foundational issues that will have solved this thing? In the National Assembly, there's a bill now going on to see if we can have resource control, trying to amend the constitution to introduce resource control, to introduce fiscal federalism, to provide autonomy, kind of a kind of devolution of powers, you know, to devolve powers so that the constituent units like the states will have to take care of things like roads, things that has to do with railways and all those stuff. See, the only way out of this restiveness, if you contain these guys and settle these ones, in the next year, other group will come forward. What do we do?
So what you're saying is that those solutions are at best cosmetic.
Elixirs, they are cosmetics.
Okay.
They are not sustainable. We must provide once and for all lasting solutions to this problem. And what are these lasting solutions? And that is why we are jumping up and down on a 7.2 trillion naira economy budget. This country, like I said, the federal government can actually raise up to 10 to 15 trillion naira. If you look at the revenue side, we said that we're going to raise, it's going to be funded 1.98 trillion from crude oil, 1.3 trillion from federal taxes, from customer exercise.
Yes.
If you look at our size of this economy, 107 trillion size economy, 5% of it is more than 5 trillion. We look at it again, they said that we are going to use 565 billion naira recovered loot. Out of that loot, the only one that is certain so far is the Abacha loot, which the budget minister told us is almost cash in hand, $300 million, 90 billion naira. The other 465 billion, we don't know where they are coming from. If we have recovered 467 billion naira from looters, who are those looters? 6 months ago, I think 3 months ago, the information minister told us that what they've recovered is 78 billion. And some other tranches of money is 188 million euros or thereabout. Yes. So if we recover 78 billion in June, where did the remaining 400 billion come between June and let us stop deceiving ourselves. One of the problems we have in this country is that we keep on churning out figures, putting out assumptions that will not work.
All right. Wow. Now, if we go back to the oil that we were talking about before, OPEC and Russia are trying to strike a deal to ensure that global oil output is cut so that they can raise the price. How will this impact on Nigeria?
Including non-OPEC countries
exactly.
too.
How will this impact on Nigeria? Right
of
now?
course,
because our benchmark is, or the projection is 2.2 million barrels per day.
Yes, and of course, the crude price benchmark is $42.50 per barrel. And if you look at what is happening, if you look at the trend of movement in crude oil prices, over the last 3 weeks, it has actually moved from 42 to 55. As yesterday, it closed at about $55 per barrel. That is the Brent, the sweet Brent, which is mostly what we produce here in Nigeria. Of course, this output cut did not actually affect Nigeria much. It's mostly those other countries like Saudi Arabia, like Iran, that have agreed for a production freeze because they initially intended to get to the level where they were before the sanctions were imposed. Now, we don't need to depend on what happens out there. Of course, we're in a global, where the world has become a global village. But we just also need to, what do we do on our own? We said we pegged crude oil output at 2.2. We must provide lasting solutions to ensure that, if you look at it, from 2009 to 2014, we were producing at an average of about 2.5 million barrels per day. Why are we pegging? Even if we peg at 2.2, what do we do sustainably? If you bribe the Niger Delta Avengers for whatever, like the Niger Delta Elders went to Abuja.
You think the increase to 65 billion naira amounts to just a bribe, or actually looking at ways of funding, amnesty included, and all the other things that need to be done in the Niger Delta?
If today Nigeria goes to resource control, just like we had it in pre-1966, before 1966, before the military boys struck, we had a robust fiscal structure that was working. If Nigeria go back to the issue of resource control, the issue of fiscal federalism, the issue of autonomy of the states, let every state grow at its own pace. I tell you this. Then in the PIB bills, there was a provision that was meant that 10% of this, of whatever is due to these communities, be paid directly to the host communities.
Yes.
these host communities will form their own vigilante to protect those pipelines. I'm telling you this. One of the problems we have in our oil and gas infrastructure, why there is this constant breakage and the disruption, is because we have not provided policy and constitutional solutions to this problem. If you do this, whatever is produced goes to those host communities. I will tell you this, it can only take those who live in those host communities to protect those pipelines. If community A knows that so amount of money will come to them through this, I will tell you, nobody from that community will break a pipeline. And again,
if they see themselves as
beneficiaries. Most of these amnesty monies, NDDC monies, go and check it. Now Delta Ministry, most of these funds provided actually ends up in private pockets.
But aren't we getting too fixated with oil? I mean, this government is saying we're going to diversify the economy.
We are not diversifying.
We're not going to be depending on oil alone.
Let me give you an example. I published an article in the Punch newspapers on opportunities in Kebbi State. You remember that Lagos State government is partnering with Kebbi State?
Yes.
Production of rice.
The rice is already out there.
Kebbi State is a rice belt. All the natural ingredients, everything that will make Kebbi State. See, if we diversify this economy, if we decide to go by way of resource control, let everybody grow at its own pace. Kebbi State as a state, from what we have seen, can generate an average of 100 billion naira every year from rice production, processing, and the distribution. But the truth of the matter is, every one of us in this country is so filled with the crude oil.
What I'm getting from what you're saying is that we have not even laid the foundation for us to build on.
Exactly. We have structural defects that we must put together. This budget will fail at the board of 2016 if we fail to do the right things.
Okay, let's come back to dwell more on this after the break. Stay with us on TVC Breakfast. We're going on a break, but don't forget that we're going out on TVC Entertainment. Our viewers there can continue with TVC Breakfast on TVC Nigeria, Concert Channel 190 and DSTV Channel 418.
Continue to watch the show on GoTV 45 and ACTV 510. Stay with us.
All right, if you're just joining us, you're watching TVC Breakfast, and we are analyzing the budget in Nigeria 2016 into 2017. The president of Nigeria presented the budget for 2017 yesterday, and a budget of about 7 trillion naira, and we are looking at that. Joining us on the set, we have Nnaemeka Obiaraeri. He is a financial analyst. We have right now joining us from Dublin on Skype, Jacob Johnson, also another financial analyst. Jacob, good morning. It's good to see you on right now. Good morning. Now, I don't know. Good morning. I don't know if you watched the presentation of the budget by President Buhari to the National Assembly yesterday, but if you did, what are your concerns?
I did. What I was thinking about the budget, I think Nigeria is moving in the right direction with that budget. And as the president himself said, it's a kind of parody because you need oil investment to actually move the country forward. I don't think the budget is bold enough in terms of investment. In fairness, 30% of the budget is devoted to capital allocation. And I think at this stage for Nigeria, we need to actually move quicker forward and invest more in capital projects. Yeah, railways and all the transportation investments, they are good and welcoming. I think power is the key thing. And from my own feeling, I couldn't actually get the sense that that is being done aggressively enough. Because even if you talk about agricultural development, if you talk about transportation, if you talk about small businesses, you still need power, you need electricity. In fact, I would have been radical. I know they were talking about investing in nuclear power. I think Nigeria should be bold enough to go forward on that ground, because in the new economy, without power, without telecommunication, it will be difficult to do a lot of things. Even all the removal of ghost workers and all that to reduce the leakages in the budget, I think we need to concentrate more on one sector first. We can't leave the other sectors behind, and we can't leave the state behind. From all I could gather from the budget, everything seems to be coming just from the federal government and trying to actually spread the tentacle to other areas. But I think the key thing would have been, that was what I was expecting, that to concentrate on power generation and make sure we can move that forward in the medium term between now and probably 2019. So that was my feeling, that we are far behind where Nigeria should be today. So let's get a niche, let's get one part of the economy really working, and I think that will actually help to move things forward in the other areas.
All right, let me stay with you, Jacob. In breaking down the figures, Power Works and Housing gets 529 billion naira, which means, of course, like you said, there is a need to tackle the power sector, which may be just the foundation that the Nigerian economy can take off from. Well, with a benchmark of $42.5 oil, and of course 2.2 million barrels per day, against the backdrop of what is going on now, well, you did say that Nigeria is moving in the right direction looking at this budget, but I guess in the studio things we have not even laid the foundation yet for the Nigerian economy to take off properly. What's your take on that?
Yes, I do agree with you on that, and that is what I am trying to say, that we need a solid foundation. We are far behind. We've been about 20-30 years behind where we should be. And now I think Nigeria should actually be concentrating more. Because whatever we do there, even trains, transportation, most other countries are moving to electrification of their transportation system, including train, including cars. So that is the direction we should be moving to. And when we talk about not generating carbon from development, I think as part of sustainable development goals, I think electricity generation, sustainable electricity generation, it's a key thing, and that will give us a good foundation to build our industries on and to build our agricultural sectors on. Because if we just move forward, if people are producing and they can't store, they can't preserve, at the end of the day, it's losses to them because it will perish. The effort of the people will be wasted. So I think we need a solid foundation before we can start spreading the tentacles.
All right, Jacob Johnson joining us from Dublin, the financial analyst. Thank you so much. Nnaemeka, the FG will no longer make provision for joint venture cash calls in 2017 budget. Is that the clincher for you with this 2017 budget?
Yes, I did address it last time I was there. And I said, if we want to get it right in the oil sector, then we must adopt the global best practices. Look at what British Petroleum is doing. Look at what Petrobras and Petronas, what they are doing. And I did suggest that we should move from the era of joint venture agreement where we're required to make monthly cash call of $600 million to an incorporated joint venture arrangement, where the JV now is an incorporated entity that has its own balance sheet, that will not require Nigeria to be making these cash calls, which we have always defaulted in. Because over the last 5 years, we have accumulated a shortfall of about $5 billion deficit cash call that we have not met. I think going forward is not just enough to, it's a clincher for me. But the next step now is for the federal government to diversify its holding in the joint venture agreements. Say come down to about 40%. It's global best practice. Hand over, say 9% to any Nigerian local investors, and then allow the IOCs or their partners, their joint venture partners, to retain 51%, just like why with LNG, Nigerian liquefied natural gas. In such a way, we can expand that sector. Nigeria has over there was this oil field that was discovered with a proven reserve of about 1 billion barrels reserve. If we go this route, we will save ourselves the pain of meeting cash call obligation that we have always defaulted in, and it will open up that space to enable the NNPC, and Kachukwu is doing a wonderful job in that sector, from his unbundling exercises to the privatization program to privatize our oil and gas infrastructure from jetty to storage to distribution. It will help us, and even to the refineries. Over time, we will expand that sector can net us between $80 to $100 billion if the structures are put right. And again, you talked something about the power sector. Yes. You now said 529 billion was budgeted for the power, housing and the works. These are 3 big ministries. Now let us even break it down. We don't even know what goes to work, power. Okay, let's even assume that half of that money goes to power. We're talking about $500 million. Come on, $500 million for what? To get the power sector up to scratch, we will need at least $100 billion investment. Now, how do we get around this? It's not just telling us that you gave $500 million or $1 billion to power, and you want us to be excited. It will go to nothing. Now, how do we revive that sector? The federal government, sometimes I feel sorry for Fashola. Fashola does not control any of the power assets. The Gencos have been sold. The Discos have been sold. The Transisco is managed by Minotoba. It has been concessioned. Now, what role can the Federal Minister of Power, his ministry, and the Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission play to ensure that we ramp up power supply in Nigeria? These assets, when they were sold, the Discos and the Gencos, before they were sold, there was a sales purchase agreement that was signed between the federal government of Nigeria and these purchasers of these assets. And this agreement was signed over 3 years. And as an investment banker who has participated both on the buy and sell sides of this kind of exercise, the sales purchase agreement contained the conditions and the terms of those sales. It also contained ramp up levels. These guys are supposed to go over time to ensure that we have power flow in Nigeria. Now, if for any reason these asset purchasers have not done what they are supposed to do, it is left for the federal government to call them back to the table and ask, hey, when we gave you these power assets, we were generating 3,000 megawatts.
How come you're
on
not
our inside the overhead agreement we signed, you're supposed to be generating so megawatts.
Yeah, but they have even come out to say that government was the first defaulter of that agreement.
Let me tell you, and it is the honest truth that some of us have refused to tell ourselves. Okay. Most of those assets were acquired through leverage financing, in and out leveraging. Most of those power assets, the problem we have in Nigeria, the problem of cronyism, the problem of clashishness. I'm trying to say it, most of those that acquire those assets do not have the financial and technical capacity to bring us to the level. That was why, at some time ago, Aliko Dangote called for the reversal of those sales.
Privatization failed.
The federal government will need to sit up, and then we need to unbundle some of those policies that is not working. I don't know why somebody would generate power in Aba and take it to Oshogbo through the Transisco before it will be distributed. We have to see how we can unbundle the Transisco. The transmission company, if it is concerned, we can unbundle it into 6 zones. And again, the issue of saying that if you generate up to 5 megawatts of power, you must put it into national grid. That policy will have to go.
The grid system.
So people can now go into captive power projects with whatever feedstock that can serve. And you see Nigeria blow.
Wow. Nnaemeka Obiaraeri, thank you very much for giving us a very powerful morning analysis. We'll certainly come back to do more on this as we get along, but thanks for coming on the program.
Thanks so much.
Thank you. We go on a break, and when we come back, we'll still have more on the program. Don't go away. Stay with us.